Peace, peace, peace. I am Philip Roundtree, and you are tuned into the October 12th edition of Rhetorically Speaking. Shout out to those of you who are watching on Facebook Live. Props to those who are watching on YouTube Live at Phil MSW. I know I changed it last week. Listen, I encourage Facebook people to go over to YouTube and watch it on there at Phil MSW. That's PHIL. Why? Because at some point I hope to monetize off of this, even though I'm like a million streams away. I'm never going to be as popular as like a Roblox video or those adults who be playing video games or those kids who are watching other kids play video games. But listen, man, we are out here just trying to do the best that we can with what we have. Last but not least, shout out to those of you who are watching on IG Live. As always, I encourage you to go over to YouTube at Phil MSW. So listen, man, we fresh off the weekend. Got a dope show on tap. We're going to be having a conversation about LeBron James. The LeBron James who won his fourth championship yesterday, beating I don't want to say a depleted Miami Heat team, but we recognize that team isn't an all-time team in the vein of a Utah Jazz who could have won the championship if they didn't come against Michael Jordan. But nonetheless, we celebrate LeBron, and we're going to be having this conversation as to whether black men's insecurities come to the forefront when they hear the name LeBron James. And so that's just something that I've been noticing for the last several years. When LeBron's name is mentioned, it's always brings up some uncomfortable feelings for black men, for brothers. I can't tell you what white folk do or Hispanic brothers do because I don't necessarily engage with them on a daily basis. But when it comes to LeBron, he's so polarizing, and I'm gonna get into it. Give me a minute. Then we're gonna have a conversation about Alex Smith of the Washington football team, the quarterback who made his 2-year return yesterday from a gruesome injury that took place 2 years ago. We're not gonna be celebrating him here. I mean, listen, to come back from any type of injury is always a tall task, and so I salute him for that, for just persevering, for the grit that's required. But there's a certain white privilege that comes with his entire situation that the sports world does not talk about. And last but not least, we're going to have this conversation briefly about Bill Burr. And I don't know if you watched him on Saturday Night Live over this past weekend, but he gave it to white women. He called himself giving it to to gay folk as well, our LGBTQ plus family. I ain't getting into that because, listen, I can't entertain the nonsense when it comes to that. But he definitely used his privilege to have this conversation and to put white women in their place. And I know you're not supposed to say anything about putting women in their place, but sometimes you gotta tell the truth. You gotta call a spade, and so we're gonna play that. So first about this LeBron James, right? Again, he won his fourth championship yesterday with the Los Angeles Lakers. He's a 4-time Finals MVP. He has won He has won a championship with 3 different teams, but yet. And I hate saying the term haters. When it comes to LeBron James. But I haven't seen anything like it when it comes to the negative the negative caveats that people offer when you try to celebrate them, and just the downright disrespect that people has not only for his legacy but his basketball play. And so it had me wondering, like, why are so many people, especially black men, mad at LeBron James? Or they can't necessarily give him 100% props. They'll give it to Kobe reluctantly, right? There's still some things about Kobe, but they'll definitely give it to Kobe before they give it to LeBron. They'll give it to Michael Jeffrey Jordan. Definitely give it to Michael Jeffrey Jordan. Now they'll do it under the guise of this is all about the on the court action, his play. He doesn't quote unquote have the killer instinct, which me personally think is steeped in this idea of toxic masculinity. You know, I don't necessarily subscribe to that term. We talk about unhealthy person. But I think that the very reasons that they love Michael Jordan, the fact that they love Kobe Bryant, in the foundation being rooted in toxic masculinity. You might be like, Phil, what do you mean? Right? It's this idea of being a killer. Right? You can't be soft. You can't be soft. If you're going to do the right thing, you need to kill while you're doing the right thing. When we talk about this, the idea of terminology when describing behaviors and what we like to see take place. They say, oh, LeBron went to Miami. He needed help. He needed help. This idea of asking for help or recognizing that you need help and going out to seek the help. Again, toxic masculinities tell brothers, tell men, tell black men in particular, no, you're not supposed to ask for help. You're supposed to do it on your own. If you receive help, if you're put in a position where you're forced to receive help, then that's different. But no, you can't take an inventory of the landscape and say, oh, this situation doesn't work for me. I need to go somewhere else. No, that makes you soft. That makes you a sellout, right? Think about how the terminology that we use and these characteristics as to why people say they don't like LeBron. How it's parallel, right? Forget the fact that Kobe said, listen, trade me to the Chicago Bulls before they made that Paul Gasol trade for who? Who'd they trade him for? Kwame Brown? Right? Kobe wanted to leave. What about Mike? Before they got Scottie Pippen. Before they got all of these assets. Mike wasn't winning. Right? But again, because the system worked in his favor and the GM did what they were supposed to do, doesn't make it right for them. And then I started thinking about just this insecurity. It's just something, and I couldn't put my finger on it when it pops up. When people say LeBron James. And I noticed it amongst black men my age, that 30 to 40-ish range. And it had me thinking, does he represent something that we aren't, right? Is it comparison? Unconscious comparison that takes place. Here you have a black man doing it quote unquote the right way, right? He's had it quote unquote easy from 16 years of age, 17 years of age, even though we know that's not the case because he's still a black man in society. He's had the spotlight on him and he's succeeded, he's achieved, no matter what the barriers have been thrown in front of him. Now here you are, you're also 36 years of age. You're not worth a $500 million. You don't have a stable home life. You aren't the best at what you do. And so maybe that resonates a little bit differently if we start to pull back the layers, right? If you're older, this young fella might be doing a little bit more than I could have ever achieved. And so it's innate. We know that's how it is within the black community anyway. Right? We usually turn our face to the younger generation. Not all. but some. That's why you see people reluctant being a mentor. Think about it. If you're a person of a certain age, are you a mentor to somebody? Are you showing a younger person who's not related to you, showing them the way? Are you complaining about how they're handling situations, how they're doing things? I don't know, you might just be a hater. And what's at the root of hating? Insecurity. Right? And so when we have this discussion about LeBron, again, a black man who has done it the right way. He's been in the spotlight since 16 years of age. Since he was here in Philadelphia bowling against Maurice Rice. Here he is at 36, 35, 36. Still out here doing it. Still doing it at a high level. What is it about us where we can't take a step back and just celebrate the man? Without offering the caveat, but he's not Mike, but he's not Kobe, but he's not Wilt. What is it within us, individually and as a community, that can't appreciate the greatness that he offers? As if greatness comes around that often. Is it because we're used to mediocrity? Is it because we've been conditioned to accept mediocrity? And so any type of outlier makes us uncomfortable. We talk about him being the consummate professional, the consummate pro. People rave about playing with him. He was likable. What is wrong with being likable? Is it the same reason that black men don't smile when they walk past another brother they don't know? Because we're so supposed to always have this killer instinct. We're supposed to always be on high alert. Hence the reason why, does it look like Mike has friends? You watched the Jordan documentary just like I did. Do you really think that Mike has authentic, long-term friends? Unless it's somebody like Ahmad Rashad, who appears not to internalize who Mike is. Think about his teammates. Think about the stories about Horace Grant. I read the Jordan rules and how he chastised Horace Grant day in and day out. It's the reason why Horace went to Orlando. I know, Horace is soft, right? Forget the fact he didn't want to take verbal abuse. Forget the fact that winning wasn't enough to accept all that came with winning, especially being in a room with Michael Jordan. But ask yourself, why doesn't Mike have any friends that we're aware of, right? You see how you talk about how thick-skinned Mike is. Charles Barkley, who he considered a friend, critiqued him in his role as an analyst and said the Bobcats at the time weren't a very good team. And he cut him off. But yet this is the person that we hold in such high regard, high esteem. Why? Because he got the job done in a way that we've always been told that you get the job done. That we couldn't think that it's another way. Same thing with Kobe. You hear Smush Parker talk. Yeah, granted, Smush wasn't the greatest player alive, right? But where's the humanity? Where's the respect? Is that what we're celebrating? This by any means perspective that we adopt when it comes to success, when it comes to achievement as black folk. No matter who we hurt. Now, granted, listen, it's just a job, for sure. But here we have somebody who does it a different way. Whose IQ, when it comes to his specific job, is off the charts. We still find reason to criticize and to find ways to, again, notice I didn't say critique. We find ways to criticize. He had 5 people on him, and he passed the ball. And people can't even just critique the basketball play. They got to take digs. Right? We got to use slurs when discussing LeBron. I had a homie of mine, a pseudo homie of mine, use a slur when discussing LeBron fans. That's taking it way beyond basketball, right? That's something different. That's something internal. That's rooted in a dislike for self. When you can't appreciate another man. Now listen, I understand what sports is rooted in. When we go back to ancient Rome, unfortunately, I can't go back further because this education system hasn't let me know about what took place prior to ancient Rome. When we talk about in Africa with black folk. Because we know this idea of competition didn't just start there. We understand what competition comes from the hunter-gatherers. And so I understand that sports is rooted in this competitive nature. This competitive fire. About trying to show and prove that you're better than the next man. And I understand that fandom, because that's what y'all are, right? That's what we are. We're fans. Kobe doesn't give 2 shits about y'all. God bless the dead. Michael Jordan could care less. LeBron could care less. Even though he's attempting to do the best that he can on a social justice level. Right? So we understand that sports is rooted in this toxic idea. But yet here we are arguing amongst one another about some shit that don't mean shit. Because when the revolution is televised, you're going to be looking at Bron like, oh, you soft because you went to Miami? Or you going to be standing arm in arm? See, I think people have this idea of sports, they're jaded by it. They're disillusioned by this idea of sports like it's real life. What's real life are these negative emotions that you attribute to sports. Now, don't get me wrong. I play and talk trash. But I realize this shit don't mean shit. If you haven't gotten that from the last 4 to 5 months, that none of this means anything, that it's legitimately a distraction in the grand scheme of things, and we talking about life. Then we gotta scream to wake up for you like Lawrence Fishburne at the end of School Days. And by you tearing down another brother for his decision making when you've never been in a situation to make a tough decision, or if you've been in a situation where you've had to make a tough decision and you folded, or you regret it, like, come on. Is this what we talking about? When have you ever stepped out on faith, believed in your skill set enough to say, listen, this not working for me. I believe in myself and my skill set. I'm going to go do something different. Many of us don't get that opportunity. Many of us don't have that luxury. Same reason why Pac said you don't see no loudmouth 30-year-olds. Because they got too much to lose. No, we see the loudmouth 30-year-olds. It just comes by way of denigrating another black man. Under the guise of sports, critique, and analysis. So we got to be mindful about it. We got to take inventory. And now, don't get me wrong. Yes, there are some people who strictly look at him and see him as a basketball player. Their thoughts, beliefs, opinions stem straight from his play. Right? But after year 17, and you still calling him garbage, he trash. That tells me everything that I need to know about you and where you are and your level of insecurity with your own life. And that's word to Marcus Garvey. I mean, I haven't seen any comments. Let me see. It said, the funny thing about your question, you see, yeah, my little thing fell off from Five Below, is that we finally have someone to be a better version of Jordan, but they consider him a threat to Jordan's legacy. But again, why was we even, and I understand this comparison piece because I just got finished talking about it. But this idea that we even have to compare, we can't appreciate the greatness for what it is. Why do we have to compare? Why can't it be a Jordan, be a Kobe, be a Wilt, be a LeBron? And we be all right with that. And appreciate these individuals for who they are and what they have to offer. Think about it, because and part of me thinks it's because we don't have much. Or we have this perception that everybody can't come. Everybody can't have it. It's only reserved for one. That's some white supremacy king shit. That it's only room for one. The alpha male. Think about the terminology we're using when we having this discussion. Why can't it be room for 3 and 4 and 5 and 10? Why must we adopt their mindset about only one can be the king, be the alpha? This sport has been going on for 75 years damn near. Why must we do it? Right? A sport that we've dominated in. And again, we look around, and listen, I've been a victim of it too. We could blame sports, we could put the onus on hip hop, we could put the onus on white supremacy. I get a little jealous when I see other speakers out there doing their thing. Like, damn, that should be me. But then I quickly got to remind myself, Phil, why can't that be you? Or that's not necessarily the spot for you and where you're supposed to be. Why can't it be 10 of y'all? And we play a part in that because we allow them to select who's going to be the representative. And so we get the Charlemagne and Joe Budden going back and forth. Like it's not room for two to coexist. But when we fighting for their crumbs, yeah, we only gonna think there's room for one. When we not saying, listen, there's room for everybody to eat. That's on us. Once we start getting away from these terms, this terminology, right? This idea of success. Because when you have this idea of success, you start measuring it against others. Instead of this idea of us doing the best we can with what we got. We talk about new energy. This ain't new energy. This just recycle. This just recycle. Listen, man. Let me see what else y'all talking about out here before this Five Below equipment. Go to the top. It was the parade that came along with LeBron going to Miami. The announcement, the stage performance, when he said he was going to get like 8 chips, then disappeared in the finals the year later. Again, we talking about nonsense. It's sports. Sports is a production. We talking about building a brand. It's the pomp and circumstance that comes with it. They say we still talking about the decision. Like think about what we talking about, Brian. We talking about the decision 11, 12 years ago. This what we saying, this what people still holding on to? Because they went to a Boys and Girls Club and donated all the money. We talking about millions of dollars. Never seen Mike do that. But like Nas said, I guess Mike donating in private. Right? But this what we holding against somebody? Like, think about that logic. That's like saying, yo, I'm holding against what you did in 3rd grade against you. Mind you, we 40. And we still holding this against people? It's a pep rally. What are you supposed to do at a pep rally? You're supposed to encourage people. We're supposed to inspire people. Why? Because he's the first one to do it. Again, he's the first person to have the spotlight on him unlike ever before. Mike didn't have it. Kobe didn't have this type of spotlight where we're talking about being on ESPN, having your games broadcasted from 16. Have your every waking move and still exceed expectations? You get what I'm talking about? Alright, yeah, he disappeared in the finals against the Mavericks. But what has he done since then? Right? Again, we always want to highlight what people do wrong. And that's just the mentality of a community, of a society. What about what he did right? Let's talk about those chips, those back-to-back chips that he won. Right? Let's talk about averaging triple doubles in the finals, with your second best player being Matthew Dellavedova. Let's talk about beating a 73-9 team in the finals. Like, if we're going to tell stories, we got to tell the whole story. We can't tell half-truths. Because when the story going to be written about Kobe, let's talk about how the Lakers hadn't made the playoffs in 7-8 years. Let's talk about how Kobe was a byproduct of that. Again, God bless the dead. Because of what his salary was. Let's talk about not getting out of the first round against the Suns after Shaq left. If we're going to talk about shortcomings, we need to talk about shortcomings. But yeah, here you have somebody go to the finals 9 straight years, 10 out of 11, and we still talking about him wearing a Jay-Z button-up, a Rockaware button-up in 2008, 2009. Again, we got to look at it. It's deep-rooted. It's deep-rooted. Kylie says, LeBron has led 3 organizations to success. Our president has success at 1. Has success at 1. He says, it's sports. It brings about a debate no matter what the subject. Everybody entitled to their own opinion. Everybody don't have to agree. I agree. Everybody doesn't have to agree. Right? And I think that's what makes the beauty of sports conversations fun to have at times. But then again, when we start using slurs to describe people who are fans, or we discredit anything that the person has ever done, and we're highlighting mistakes, shortcomings, and not highlighting resilience, and recognizing and acknowledging greatness. Again, greatness is a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow. Especially when it's happening while you're present. We're used to idolizing people post-mortem. Right? Once they're dead and gone. Then we can look back on the Dr. King and say, oh, he was amazing. We can look back on Malcolm. We can look back on Garvey. We can look back on all of these amazing black folk who spoke truth to power. But why can't we appreciate it when we in it? Why can't we appreciate a good thing while we in it? And again, I think this starts to seep into other areas of our lives if we open and honest about it. If we start to peel back the layers, we start to see what we're afraid of. Are we afraid of success? Are we afraid of not stepping out on faith? This one, it gets bigger than Nino Brown. Let me scroll down. Let's see. So yeah, you know what? I don't even feel like talking about these other 2 topics. I done give y'all 34 minutes of LeBron, and I don't know what tomorrow gonna hold. I got a lot of work to do, so maybe I can add this Alex Smith story and Bill Burr story tomorrow. Listen, I'll be back tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Until next time, peace.